smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Hour number 3, welcome to it. Our third and final live right here on this Tuesday on the early line all across the SportsGrid network. That is SportsGrid. We are live in studio together. He is Donnie right side. I am Ben Stevens. The coach, James Young, JY, will join us in just a couple of minutes for the entirety of this final hour. We look back one final time on last night's national championship game in what? Winning 2 national championships in a row means for Connecticut at the pinnacle of the sport in the pantheon of college basketball. An early look at 2024-25. Some more conversation around Cal. That's John Calipari making his way to Arkansas and leaving Kentucky. Who are the Cats going to hire as their next head coach? And, of course, we'll get ready for the final week of the NBA regular season. Just 5 days remain, DRS, and 28 of the 30 clubs in action tonight. 14 games on a robust Tuesday slate after a night off from the association.
It's fantastic. We've got a lot to look forward to. You put a bow on a season, it is kind of a little solemn because college basketball is so much fun to watch. It's so much fun to handicap. You know, huge Saturdays. The boys did such a great job all season long, and also heading down the stretch here. We tried to give you the best program we possibly could. Award-winning program at that. Absolutely. That's what we do here. But it is nice to say, okay, the Masters is this week. Major League Baseball is now going to take center stage. But you can still look forward to college basketball next year and keep the people engaged in that.
For me, I'm a little bit sad. Listen, I'm a college football and college basketball guy first and foremost. We'll have the College World Series.
September, Ben.
I mean, I'm going to be on a lazy schedule.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, that's not too bad.
Ben hanging out all summer. What are you going to do?
Let's welcome in. The guy's here, man. Let's welcome in our SportsGrid radio audience live right here to hour number 3. He is Donnie Rightside. I'm Ben Stevens. You're listening on Sirius XM Channel 159. All of our radio terrestrial affiliates now in the fold as well. So a women's national championship game on Sunday, a historic number that we will show you between Iowa and South Carolina. The Gamecocks continue their dynasty in Columbia. Third national championship since 2017. Connecticut goes back-to-back. A repeat national title winner for the first time since 06 and 07 when Florida did so. So the end of the tournaments has come. The end of a month filled with madness. Which big dance did you enjoy more? It's a pretty even split at SportsGrid on Twitter. That's where the poll lives today. Fade the public. The men's 51% saying that they like that tournament more. For the women's big dance, about 49%. But pretty much we're splitting hairs here, DRS.
Yeah, we are. And again, the women's game gets the boost for me because sometimes it's what have you done for me lately. And the women's game was just exceptional all the way through this year. Caitlin Clark, so many storylines. LSU and Angel Reese and Kim Mulkey. And then you take a look at UConn making that run with Beckers. And then you take a look at Juju Watkins out there on the West Coast. It's in really good hands here. But also, you want to say shout out to the men's game, who had a very good tournament, has a dominant champion in UConn. But also things that we can look forward to. We're never going to get back 4-year starters that are going to stay and then go to the NBA's first-round draft picks. That's not going to change. But the G League no longer running one of the teams that they have, which will put back in some NBA-level talent that we can enjoy. So both of these games, the men's and the women's game, on solid footing, man. We should have a great season.
I will be really fascinated to see the young players coming into college basketball. Not so much on the women's side, but still with the ability to be one and done. If they do leave or if the NIL opportunities present more of a chance for staying power in college basketball. Duke is the national championship favorite for next year's men's national title at an 11-1 price because they have 5 of the 18 top recruits in the 2024 class. You pair that up with what you expect to be some returning talent. I don't think Jared McCain is staying. I don't think Kyle Filipowski is staying. I believe Jeremy Roach is out of eligibility, but it's hard to say at this moment. It will be a younger cast and crew in Durham. What does it mean for success in the NCAA tournament? What does it mean overall for Duke's staying power year over year? But I also voted for the women's tournament as well because there was nothing, frankly, like we saw with the superstars at this level over the past month. Of course, Iowa's Caitlin Clark leading the way, getting the Hawkeyes to their second consecutive national championship game in program history for the first time ever. They had never made the national title game prior to Caitlin Clark a year ago. But it doesn't stop there. Connecticut's Paige Beckers returning to full health and leading UConn back to a Final Four for the first time in 2 years, which is saying something, for the 24th time in program history. USC's Juju Watkins. We saw Caitlin Clark set the D1 scoring record. Well, Juju Watkins, the D1 freshman scoring record in women's college basketball. She returns to Southern Cal next year at USC. And, of course, Dawn Staley is the GOAT right now, in my estimation, in college hoops. No better head coach than what we are seeing out of Dawn Staley. 3 national championships in the last 7 years for South Carolina, and doing so with an entirely new starting 5. Yeah. And a lot of those young players that stepped up in a big way in the national championship game. Tessa Johnson off the bench, leading scorer. Malaysia Fulwiley off the bench as well, really providing a spark to the offense in the opening half for the Gamecocks. They're back in Columbia next year.
Yeah, it's going to be great to watch, too, because you're taking a look at no more. It's just being UConn here. And that's why I gave so much credit to Dawn Staley being a head coach, not because she's a great coach, but really bringing the women's game back. And now you're saying there's a dynasty in the Northeast in UConn. There's a dynasty in the Southeast at South Carolina. You even saw LSU step up there with Kim Mulkey as a coach for the South. And then the West Coast, UCLA and USC do some damage out there with superstar talent as well. So it's no longer us looking at, oh, no, what's the big women's story? Well, UConn won 130-plus games, and they finally lost. It's not that anyway. You have more parity here, more superstars, and it's apparent that the women's game is much, much better now than even what it was 5 years ago.
We'll see where LSU stands entering next year. We expect some attrition of a talented young freshman class, and Angel Reese is headed to the WNBA, but Flau'jae Johnson remains, at least at the moment, in Baton Rouge. What does Iowa do post-Caitlin Clark and post-Gabby Marshall and post-Kate Martin, who brought in this sweeping era of success in Iowa City? So many storylines to follow in women's college basketball. And if you enjoyed this tournament, don't just turn it off now. I don't expect that to be the case for what we saw in historic numbers. Every game Iowa played in the last week, dating back to last Monday night in the Elite Eight rematch of the national championship game against LSU, was the most watched women's basketball game ever. 12.3 for the Bayou Bengals and the Hawkeyes. 14.2 million that is in the Final Four on Friday night for Iowa and UConn. And 18.7 million people watch the national championship game on Sunday between South Carolina and Iowa. Not just the most watched women's college basketball game ever, or the most watched college basketball game since 2019, the most watched basketball game. That includes the NBA. NBA Finals matchups since 2019 in the last 5 years. A monumental moment in the history of women's college basketball, and I think they will continue to capitalize on this growth in the sport.
No, they certainly will, and also I have a daughter in middle school now, doesn't really like basketball, but she knew who Caitlin Clark and Iowa were. That shows the reach here that she actually had, how many people are tuning in. Let's see if they can carry that momentum over next year.
WNBA draft just 6 days away. Caitlin Clark is going to go number 1 overall to the Indiana Fever, but some of those names that you might have just learned in March now taking that next step up to the next level. JY joins us next here on the Early Line.
Is it pretty much cut and dry that NC State is the biggest surprise of the weekend? I mean, I don't think anybody's bracket had the Wolfpack going this far.
I think they're going to find a way to keep this one close. And we all know Purdue's tournament history under Matt Painter. They've had a lot of early exits when they've been good teams, and maybe this is the time they'll exercise their demons. It's kind of like when Virginia lost to that 16-seed UMBC.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that I've been able to move to a home that I'm very excited about is it's really cool, and so far just love everybody that I've met at SportsGrid, and I'm just super pumped for the opportunity. Sometimes things that I wouldn't feel comfortable asking, whether it was me playing and just trying to get a tidbit on the golf course and certain thing the player might have learned. Now I'm getting that information because I don't mind asking it.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Live right here on the early line on this Tuesday, all jam-packed and in studio together. Donnie right side, Ben Stevens, and now the coach JY, James Young, joins us for the remainder of this third and final hour of the early line. JY, how much you sleep last night?
About 3 hours. Yeah. But I'll tell you right now, this is great. Usually I'm running the wing. They got the big man running the point.
We love that.
Buckle up, people. I'm going to take it coast to coast.
We love that. We keep the energy going at least for a couple of more minutes here. JY and I were live on SportsGrid's Bracket Central up until midnight Eastern, but we're here in the morning to recap and react to everything that we saw last night in Phoenix. And for a second consecutive year, JY, Connecticut wins a national championship. Standing tall at the end, cutting down the nets on the ladders for a second straight season. First repeat national title winner since 2006 and 07 when Florida accomplished that feat. 12 games in the NCAA tournament in the last 2 years, 12 victories, all by at least 13 points. I have asked you many times, describe what you are seeing out of UConn. Now, after a second straight national championship, where does this Connecticut group rank in the history of college basketball?
I think they have to be up there for not regards to overall talent, but from the fact of what they lost. I think, Dan Hurley made a pretty good case last night after the game. If you look at the last two teams to win back-to-back national championships, the Florida team, right, 04-05, Duke, 91-92. On the back-to-back year, most of the top players returned to that team. When you look at, obviously, UConn losing Jackson, losing Hawkins, losing Sonogo, right, and then getting uplifted performances of Donovan Clingan, of Tristan Newton, right, of Caravan. Then you bring in Spencer as a transfer. Castle comes in. So it wasn't a completely new group, but it was a different group. So to me, I don't know if I can put them up there where the best, but I'm going to say it's one of the most impressive by the fact that they were bringing in all these new players and still got the job done.
If you're taking a look, JY, at this game, and also let's bring Dan Hurley into the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Multiple-time national championship, back-to-back now, and you can argue right now that Storrs, Connecticut is the basketball capital of the world, which you include the women here. But talk about the game plan yesterday, because a handicap for myself yesterday was, all right, I think Klingan's going to do a good job on Edey, which means he gets around 20 points, 10 rebounds, and you live with that, and we'll see if they can shut down the rest of the lineup. But Dan Hurley basically coming out and saying, we'll let Edey get his, and we won't let anybody else get anything else. They win by 15 points. It was a stroke of genius because before the game, you told me Edey's getting 37. Purdue's cutting down the nets for me.
Well, it's interesting because there are two ways that you always can attack it as a coach. Number one is you could just say, I'm going to let the best player eat, and I'm going to take away everyone else. Or you could do the other is you let everybody else kind of score and take away the big. I thought it was a stroke of genius. And we saw it early on with the fact that they went one-on-one with Donnie McClain guarding Zach Edey. No double team. The only time they went double team is when Johnson came in the game, and it wasn't what we call a fire. It was a choke, meaning it wasn't on the catch. It was on the dribble. And I thought what Dan Hurley did was right. Because if you think about a team like Purdue, if you look at Lawyer and you look at Smith, right, and Gillis, Jones a little bit, but the rest of those guys aren't the type of guards that can create their own shot. They rely on the ball getting in, double team comes, skip the ball out, hit the three. So what I thought Dan Hurley said is, all right, let's do this. We're going to let Zach go and go off. We'll let him get his 37 points, but we're going to neutralize everyone else. Here's the key. 47-17, if I'm not mistaken. That is the point output of the three starting guards of UConn and Newton, Spencer, and I don't know why I'm blanking on the third one all of a sudden.
Stephon
Gassel versus, Lawyer, Jones, and Smith. 30 points. So even though it was 37 by Zach Edey, you got 17 from the other three guards. Kaufman Wren didn't do much. A much more balanced scoring by UConn. They got the job done last night.
And anybody on UConn can be that star in that game. Last night, it was Tristan Newton, like he was last year on that Monday night in April that ended in a national championship in Houston. There is talent and there is depth. Maybe there are not the superstars of the month of March like we have seen take over the NCAA tournament in years past. But Tristan Newton has been UConn's leading scorer in each of its two national championship game victories over these past 2 years. He wins the Final Four's most outstanding player last night. How critical is what Tristan Newton does for how UConn wants to see its success?
The best way to describe Tristan Newton, man, is he's a chameleon, right? So he basically does what Dan Hurley needs him to do. And what I saw last night was someone who was extremely aggressive off the high ball screen and knowing that there was really no one in front of him that can check him one-on-one. So he's able to get into the basket, use his size, and score, but then he was able to knock down a couple of threes as well. And then if you need him to turn around and get you 7 assists, he got you. If you want him to get 5 rebounds, he got you there. So to me, he was absolutely fantastic in that game. When they struggled, he seemed to find the guys the right shots. And it just shows, I talk about the offensive flexibility, right? And you kind of mentioned it. They could beat you in so many different ways. Where was the matchup advantage? It was at the point guard spot in regards to the athleticism and length of Tristan Newton and his defensive prowess, and he was the leader last night for UConn.
Coach, let's take a look at the big boys last night, and that was the key matchup looking forward to it. Once we knew the Final Four was set, all we kept thinking to ourselves was, my goodness, if Monday night, if we meet up here and it's going to be Zach Edey going against Donovan Clingan, I can't wait to see how that plays out. And also, you take a look at if he was going to get help. He didn't get any help all night long, but I loved what I saw out of Zach Edey last night, even in a losing effort, 37 points and 10 rebounds. Coach, the thing I was most impressed with was Clingan is a great defender. He had post moves for days down there fighting through contact, making move after move. Loved what I saw out of him, but also from an aspect of Donovan Clingan, do you figure he wound up with his part of the equation, meaning that this was my job here. I gave up 37 points, but we won by 15. Usually players themselves would say, you know what, boy, man, I don't think I had a great effort. But to me, that was the effort. Didn't foul out, didn't cause the other guys to get involved, and basically the play control flow was through the low post. And Clingan, I thought, was okay, despite the points that Edey got.
Well, I think the thing about first off is he really made Zach earn all 37.
Yeah.
He was on him.
Was.
Even some of the jump hooks that you saw Zach Edey make, we talked about it last night, they were a little bit further away from the basket than normal. So he kind of pushed him out of his spot. And Zach Edey was absolutely tremendous. Draymond Green, do me a favor, shut your mouth, stop talking about college basketball, and he quit in the early second half. Just you worry about all the problems you're in, the dysfunction you've done in Golden State. Stay out of this because you don't know what you're talking about. Zach Edey was absolutely fantastic last night. But the Donovan Clingan, he did his job. His job was to make him work and allow it to the fact of we can't send a double team. We can't send a double team. I'm going to put you on an island. Yep. And I thought he was tremendous. I also thought secretly the 2 back-to-back screen lob dunks to Johnson kind of uplifted that UConn team early in the second half by using him off the bench. So I thought Dan Hurley was fantastic. Yeah. Let the guy score all he want. Locked at everybody else.
Listen, Zach Edey got the better of Donovan Clingan last night, but that was the game plan. 37 of the 60 for Purdue, scored by Edey. Everybody else, just 23 points. So now there is the conversation about Connecticut. A blue blood, a new blood, a dynasty, 6 national championships in the last 25 years. That is double the number for UNC and Duke, each school having 3 in terms of the most in the past 2.5 decades. There is conversation about where is the hotbed? Where is the premier program, JY, in college basketball? Does college hoops run through stores?
Kevin Walsh, I'm very sorry to tell you this, but it runs through stores. If you look at the 5 national championships in the last 25 years. If you
6?
6, I should say. I'm sorry. And all the national championships that Gino Auriemma has won. The hotbed of basketball runs squarely through Stores, Connecticut, and it's amazing what it's done because the most impressive part about the 6 national championships is it's with 3 different coaches. And what Dan Hurley has done in 6 years after taking over for Kevin Ollie and rejuvenating a program that thought people was on the downslope, getting out of the American, going it back into the Big East has been vital. This program is the blue blood of America, and it's the best program in the country.
Connecticut has been at the pinnacle of college basketball each of the previous 2 seasons. What about moving forward into 2024-25 and the big changes that we are going to see come our way next year, like a new head coach in Kentucky? Is Dan Hurley leaving? We'll ask JY. Up next, live right here on the Early Line.
Is it pretty much cut and dry that NC State is the biggest surprise of the weekend? I don't think anybody's bracket had the Wolfpack going this far.
I think they're going to find a way to keep this one close. And we all know Purdue's tournament history under Matt Painter. They've had a lot of early exits when they've been good teams, and maybe this is the time they'll exercise their demons. It's kind of like when Virginia lost to that 16-seed UMBC.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that I've been able to move to a home that I'm very excited about is it's really cool, and so far just love everybody that I've met at SportsGrid, and I'm just super pumped for the opportunity. Sometimes things that I wouldn't feel comfortable asking, whether it was me playing and just trying to get a tidbit on the golf course and certain thing a player might have learned. Now I'm getting that information because I don't mind asking it.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Live right here on the early line on SportsGrid and all across that SportsGrid network. We are live in studio together for a few more segments. He is the coach, James Young, Donnie right side, myself, Ben Stevens. So, Connecticut ends a second consecutive college basketball season on top of the sport as a national champion. But many sweeping changes coming our way in collegiate athletics starting next year. Conference realignment in a very big way. And in college basketball, one of the biggest changes and one of the biggest news stories in the past 48 hours, John Calipari leaving Kentucky and heading to Arkansas. We'll go through this step by step, JY, but let's start with Coach Cal. After 15 years at Kentucky, John Calipari, who has the most wins of any active men's head college basketball coach, is now on his way to Fayetteville. The reason things were a little bit sour in Lexington is because Kentucky never reached the Sweet 16 in the last 5 years. Their last second weekend appearance in the NCAA tournament back in 2019. So John Calipari heads to Arkansas. What can Hog Nation expect out of the new head man of the Razorbacks?
Well, you're going to have to respect high-level recruiting and a guy that can get some of the best players in the country year by year. So I think, for Arkansas, a team that, let's be honest, folks, has a long basketball tradition. If you don't think Arkansas has basketball tradition, go check the record books. Go look and see what guys like Mike Anderson and what Nolan Richardson did for that great university. Will Big Suey, 1995, I do believe, a national championship with Big Nasty, Corliss Williamson, Scotty Thurman, so on and so forth. So to me, it is for them, they get the biggest name in the industry, right? They're going to give him about $5 or so million in NIL money to allow him to go develop the roster. I just think it's going to take him at least a year. It's really late in the game. A lot of kids may have already moved on from the portal. I don't know what happens to all the recruits that were going with him to Kentucky. I don't know if they follow suit or stay. But to me, first year, temper expectations. By year 2, I don't care what anybody thinks. Cal has to get teams to the second weekend of the tournament every year. You're getting paid that much. And that's why you left Kentucky, because it started to get restless with the fan base and the boosters.
If we take a look, Coach, at Kentucky itself, because, again, I preface this phrase multiple times, I do think it's an NBA franchise in college basketball. So you're going to need a powerful head coach there. But before we get into the candidates itself, Calipari's gone now. If you are the Kentucky fan base, what is the next move for you? What are you expecting? And also, what's going to excite you?
Well, obviously, you have to go get a powerful name. But I think the best thing I could say for Kentucky fans is this, and I think Dan Hurley has figured it out the best of anybody. Roster construction in the college game is more important now than ever with the NIL and the transfer portal, meaning you just can't go get like 7 of the top 20 players in the country and think you're going to win that championship. Although that's why I think I'm nervous about Duke, because it's all young kids. You got to find a way to mix up veteran leadership, right, with a piece or two from the portal, and then maybe a couple, maybe 1 or 2 star players. It's about cohesion. It's about fit, because these teams are older and more experienced than ever. So to me, if you're Kentucky, you want to make sure you want to sit down with whoever candidate is and says, show me how you're going to build the roster. The way we've done it in the past, it worked in 2010, 2009.
Yeah.
It does not work now. How do you build the roster?
A couple of things here. We'll be discussing Arkansas basketball in large part next year. Woo, Big Suey. Not whoa, Big Suey.
Whoa,
it's a big thing.
Whoa.
Woo, Big Suey, just so we know.
Thank you.
And outside of that, I think it's a really interesting thing for Kentucky because they don't have to pay Cal's buyout. They can save $33 million to invest in whoever that shiny new head coach making its way to Lexington is. And I think Kentucky fans love the idea of seeing their guys in the NBA being the biggest stars at the next level. But what Kentucky fans really want is winning basketball. And they want national championships. They don't give a damn if this guy's a lottery pick. They want that lottery pick to lead them to the Final Four and a national championship. And that is something that John Calipari had not done in a very long time. Last Final Four appearance for Kentucky was way back in 2015. They are hoping that next head coach can get them back to the premier destination in college hoops. A guy that has done that very well in stores is Dan Hurley. So with success, people look at you to take that next step, the elevation. Is Kentucky a better job than Connecticut? You would think if there was one spot in the sport with a job opening that would be seen as an elevation over the likes of a UConn, it might be Kentucky. Not sure that it is, but it might. Dan Hurley, after winning his second consecutive national title, was asked about Kentucky's head coaching vacancy and if he expects to return to Stores next season. And he said, quote, yeah, I don't think that's a concern. My wife, you should have her answer that. End quote. So, JY, I ask you, is Dan Hurley leaving Connecticut this offseason?
I don't see it. I don't see it. And me just being a Jersey guy and knowing of the Hurley family and coaching against Mr. Hurley and even coaching a long time ago against Danny when he was at Danny's Dan now at St. Benedict's. They are a loyal family. And if you think about the number of times that Mr. Hurley's been offered collegiate jobs, he never left St. Anthony. They're a Northeast family. Their roots are dug into North Jersey. So to me, I don't see it. I think he's got the greatest job right now because of the fact of they love him up there. They're going to have to find him the way to give him more money. If you look at Gino Auriemma, he's the third highest paid women's basketball coach in the country at $3.1 million. So there is money there in Stores to pay Dan Hurley. Now, everybody's got a price, but I don't know if that works for him because of the amount of pressure that's going to come to Lexington right away. He's got a great spot there, but there definitely are a number of intriguing candidates that Kentucky should be looking at.
Two-part question here for you, Coach, and also deals with who Kentucky should get. Number one, Dan Hurley is going to make a lot of money regardless if he stays or goes. But also, the NBA could come calling with an absolute avalanche of cash for him. Could you see him going pro? And also, who does fit here for Kentucky for you?
I don't think he's a pro guy because he you know what he's got? He's got a little bit of like
insanity.
He's got Tibbs in him. He's like a young Thibodeau, which means he's a control freak and he's over the top. I don't know how long that lasts because you've seen what Tibbs kind of wears himself out in the locker room everywhere he goes. To me, when you start looking up coaches to look at, I will go to the pros, and I just keep looking at Billy Donovan. This is someone that's won in the SEC. I know he hasn't been in college in a long time. He's won in the SEC. He's got back-to-back national championships. He's gone to the pros. He's coached some of the greatest players on planet Earth, and he's developed guards, which I think is a big thing. Billy Donovan may be a candidate because look for Chicago to blow it up at the end of the year. If you look at college, Nate Oates already said no last night. Completely understand that. So look at Scott Drew, someone at Baylor who's a fantastic coach, who has coached five-star kids, who has shown roster flexibility in regard to the transfer portal and experienced players. I think he makes sense. I think Bruce Pearl, being from the SEC, as someone that's charismatic, that's got this aura and cockiness and arrogance, that I think would actually fit really, really well in a place like Lexington. Yeah. Obviously, Mark Few is like the ultimate wild card because does he want to leave what he has built to go to Lexington? It would be really, you have to give him a ton of money because I think he's someone that's very comfortable at Gonzaga. I know Rick Pitino's on this list. I personally don't see it because I think Rick is someone that's going to probably coach for another 2 to 3 years unless you hire Rick Pitino and then there's this young head coach that you know in 2 or 3 years is going to take over the program that's the placeholder. That just does not make sense. You want to go get a guy that's going to be there for 10, 15 years, Rick Pitino is not that candidate.
Listen, sometimes you have to move back to move forward, but I don't believe it's going to be Pitino in Lexington this time around like it was in the mid-'90s. Billy Donovan spent 19 years at Florida. Sure, he has not coached in the SEC or college hoops since 2015, but the landscape now very different than what it was then. Much more professional in nature with the NIL, with the transfer portal, and of course, Kentucky is going to have all the investment to be at the very top of how college basketball is currently constructed. Very interesting times. Yeah, and Dan Hurley, by the way, his sideline antics kind of pissed off a lot of people watching the national championship game last night. He walked onto the floor. He pushed Cam Spencer. A wild thing, was not given a technical. But that's been Dan Hurley. And they've won 2 national championships, so I don't really know why last night all of a sudden it was on display like here's this Cinderella team we had not seen in a very long time. I don't think we have 30 left. I think we have 1:30 left. So I will ask you this about next year's odds to win a national championship in 2024-25. Duke enters as the favorite at 11-1. We know how highly touted the recruiting class is on its way to Durham. You see these very early odds for next year's college basketball season. What do you make of the prices?
Interesting enough, can you pull that graphic back up there real quick? Because there's one there that I saw Ben talk about last night. Folks, I'm not saying they should be up there at 30-1, but the State University of New Jersey, Rutgers, they are back. Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, star recruiting class, and there's rumors that they're going to get high-impact transfers because they want to play with them. Be on the lookout.
JY the Insider.
Could Ahmad Bradshaw from Camden come back to Jersey? Intriguing times at Rutgers. Now, I don't think they'll win that championship, but you get a nice number of them that makes Sweet 16, like Ben talked about last night or this morning. Jump on it. Rutgers will make a run to the Sweet 16 this upcoming season.
That's my bold prediction for 2024-25. The Scarlet Knights into the second weekend for the first time since 1979. I think the saying goes, your family, your religion, and Rutgers basketball. Now to the NBA. Up next.
Is it pretty much cut and dry that NC State is the biggest surprise of the weekend? I mean, I don't think anybody's bracket had the Wolfpack going this far.
I think they're going to find a way to keep this one close. And we all know Purdue's tournament history under Matt Painter. They've had a lot of early exits when they've been good teams, and maybe this is the time they'll exercise their demons. It's kind of like when Virginia lost to that 16-seed UMBC.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that I've been able to move to a home that I'm very excited about is it's really cool, and so far just love everybody that I've met at SportsGrid, and I'm just super pumped for the opportunity. Sometimes things that I wouldn't feel comfortable asking, whether it was me playing and just trying to get a tidbit on the golf course and certain thing a player might have learned. Now I'm getting that information because I don't mind asking it.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
So a college basketball season has now come to a close, so we focus our attention on the association. Just 5 more days remain in the NBA's regular season to figure out the postseason picture. Now, the 10 teams that will play in the postseason in each conference have already been determined. The 10 teams in the East, the 10 teams in the West. 7 through 10 will be in the play-in tournament. 1 through 6 right into the playoffs. And could this be a potential Eastern Conference Finals preview tonight in Milwaukee? Not the way the Bucks are playing as of late. Milwaukee has dropped 4 straight. They've been booked as a favorite in all 4. 3 of the 4 as a double-digit favorite. Maybe it's good news, JY. They're an underdog tonight at home against the NBA's best team, the Boston Celtics. 2-point spread in favor of the C's. The over-under 228. The Celtics have already wrapped up the number 1 overall seed in the Eastern Conference. Milwaukee now trying to hold on to that 2nd seed. What is the motivation tonight for Milwaukee?
To win? To show up? To show that you even are worthy of contendership? To show the fact that you shouldn't have, you didn't make a mistake in firing Adrian Griffin, who was, 30-11 when he got let go because he lost the locker room? To me, this is a pivotal time for the Milwaukee Bucks. The Milwaukee Bucks team that came out of the All-Star break hot, I think winners of 5 straight games, and have really just looked like a team that's lost. And the thing that's most concerning to me about them is their defense. It has not been fixed. Pat Bev is not going to fix the fact that you guys can't stop guards. They get in front of Jalen Brunson, barbecue chicken. They get in front of Tyrese Halliburton, barbecue chicken. They get in front of Tyrese Maxey, barbecue chicken. And I haven't even gone to the Western Conference yet. So to me, they have to do a better job defensively, and they have to find a way to get Giannis and Damian Lillard to play well together. It's not working. And I'm going to say this. It is important that you have to understand, this is the 3rd coach in a calendar year in Milwaukee. If they don't get it done, I know I've been on Doc Rivers, I've bashed him ad nauseum since I've been on this network. At some point, you must look at Giannis and say, well, the one thing that hasn't changed is you are the leader of this team. He has to step up on both sides of the floor if this team's going to make a run.
A few games left in the regular season here, Coach, for the Milwaukee Bucks. And we've been talking long-term about the Phoenix Suns. Hey, they didn't play enough together this year, and can they catch lightning in a bottle at the end of the season? Things are starting to look up for them. But Milwaukee playing their worst basketball at this time of the season, is there a chance that we can see them, I don't want to say resurrect their season in the final 3 games. That's not fair. But what do we see in the playoffs? Because quite frankly, they're on a collision course to take on the Sixers and the Miami Heat in round number 1. You better get your act together.
Well, they better get their act together quick, or they better hope that find a way that Philadelphia and Miami find their ways to 5 and 6 in the Eastern Conference. So, because if you really think about it, folks, if Milwaukee plays Philadelphia and JoJo is healthy, I'm taking Philadelphia in a 7-game series. If they play Miami, didn't they lose to Miami once in a 1-8 matchup, right? So last year. So to me, when you start looking at, Milwaukee, you better start finding who can they beat in the first round, right? New York, questionable. Cleveland, they're a fraud. We can talk about them whenever y'all want to. Miami, Orlando, maybe too young. But if they see Philadelphia or Miami or maybe even Indiana, who Tyrese Halliburton has their number, they're going to be in trouble, folks. And I don't know if they can fix this.
Seeds 3 through 6 right now in the Eastern Conference. That is Orlando in the 3 spot all the way down, or actually seeds 3 through 8, all the way down to Miami, who is currently in the 8 spot, separated by only 3 games. 6 teams, all separated by just 3 games. Now, there's only about 3 or 4 games left for every team around the association, so it's tough to make up a significant amount of ground in that time, but there is a lot to be figured out in the Eastern Conference standings, and the Bucks only a game in front of Orlando and New York. The Magic in the 3, the Knicks in the 4 spot. Now we go to the Western Conference. The Lakers still trying to battle at least to the 7-8 spot of that Western Conference play-in tournament, but if the season ended today, it does in 5 days, it would be the Lakers and the Warriors in the 9-10 Western Conference play-in tournament game. The Lakers the 9 seed, the Warriors the 10 seed. So we go tonight to Los Angeles. The Lakers a 2.5-point home favorite. Total at 236.5. A potential play-in preview. So what do we see tonight?
We see fireworks, and we see both teams want to try and find their way to see if they could get their way to 8. With the Sacramento Kings team, it's 5-5 their last 10 games, and with a difficult schedule down the stretch, still having to play Oklahoma City, Phoenix, and New Orleans. 3 teams that are fighting for position. So this is a big game for both teams if they want to try and find a way to get themselves to 7-8, because you get 2 chances to try and get yourself into the playoffs as opposed to 1. So it's a huge matchup tonight. Expect a lot of fireworks. All the stars should be on play. I know Anthony Davis got his eye poked. I think he should be good to go. But it's going to be a really big matchup tonight for both teams as they try to leapfrog the Kings, who has 33 losses but just lost Kevin Huerter and Malik Monk in the last week.
JY, let me ask you a question about this, too. Looking at Golden State and Los Angeles, let's just say it stays status quo. Number 10 seed, number 9 seed, respectively. Who has the best chance of getting out of the play-in round?
Oh, I mean, that's tough. I mean, I'm gonna lean on the Lakers here, and just the fact that I think LeBron and AD will find their way to get them through. Golden State has been such a crazy what's going on there ever since trading Jordan Poole. You got Draymond, who's up to his old antics. You never know when he's going to explode. You have the Klay Thompson going to the bench that he did not like, but now Klay's playing arguably his best basketball in years. Why, folks? He's in a contract year. Klay wants to get paid and get one last big deal. So to me, I like the Lakers in that spot to get out of that play-in or get into playoffs.
Yeah.
But the Golden State Warriors do have an easier schedule down the stretch. 2 of their 4 games are Portland and Utah, and no one tanks better in the second half of the season than the Utah Jazz.
Yeah, listen, a lot of positioning to figure out even within the play-in tournament component of the postseason in the NBA's Western Conference. Both teams playing good basketball, though, as of right now. Golden State has won 7 of their last 8. They have covered in 5 of those 7 wins. The Lakers victorious in 9 of their last 11, over in 8 of their last 12. But if this is even slightly reminiscent of a postseason game in a play-in tournament preview, 236 for an over-under feels just a little bit high. Now we go to Phoenix. The Suns, 7.5-point favorite tonight against the Clippers. LA, a big win at home on Sunday, coming back from down 26 against the Cavaliers. Paul George hitting the game winner without Kawhi Leonard out there. So this 7.5-point spread tonight, JY, in the Valley for the Suns would indicate that LA is probably not at full health. Donnie and I have bemoaned numerous times throughout the home stretch of this NBA regular season. Phoenix, in opportunities to prove it is a true contender in the Western Conference, falls short. We saw it once again against New Orleans at home on Sunday in a game the Suns could have put some distance between them and the 6th spot, or at least staying out of the play-in tournament. They failed to do so. What do you expect out of Phoenix tonight?
I expect them to get a win. I don't know if they cover the spread, but they need this win. They have, in the Western Conference, the hardest schedule left with Minnesota, Clippers twice, and Sacramento. But it's a little bit tricky if you really look at it for a fact that the Clippers team that's 2 games ahead of the loss column of Dallas. So they got a little bit of wiggle room.
They do.
And they're probably going to want to rest their guys because they're locked in that 4-5 matchup, most likely against Dallas. So this is the opportunity for Phoenix to try and see if they can make one last run to be that 6th seed, which would be a really intriguing matchup in that 3-6 if it were to be Oklahoma City and Phoenix. Oklahoma City has rested SGA a bunch of times down the stretch of the season. They want to get ready to go. Phoenix, folks, they have firepower. There's no question about it with their big 3. Yusuf Nurkic has been, I don't want to call it a revelation, but an upgrade over DeAndre Ayton because of his ability to rebound the ball and pass the ball out of the high post. Grayson Allen shooting the ball the best he's gotten in his career. I think about 46% from three. Outstanding basketball. But you're right. Every time they're in a big spot, they choke. This should be a win. I am nervous about the spread of 7.5.
Sacramento trying to get out of the play-in round here and get into that top six. And also OKC, we got some interesting facts here. What are they trying to do? Take down the number one overall seed in the Western Conference, which would be key. A 2.5 number at the FanDuel Sportsbook this morning has now moved to minus 5.5 as a favorite towards OKC, which leads us to believe we might be taking a look at some guys taking the night off here as well. A 227 total, down from 228 in this ball game. Kings and the Thunder tonight. Just so easy to take that home team. What are we looking at?
I mean, it should be, because I just look at a Sacramento team that's really folding down the stretch, right? Obviously, losers won their last game, but I think they beat Brooklyn. But I mean, three of us and Kevin and Joe Frizo, we can give the Nets a game. I mean,
Probably,
at least for about a quarter, and then maybe I'll run out of gas. But anyway, this team in Sacramento is going the opposite direction of everyone else, and that's why I think the Lakers and the Warriors are looking at them to find a way to get to that spot. Oklahoma City, they're starting to try to get themselves healthy. They are obviously one game back. I think they're going to try and play for that one seed. So to me, I would look at OKC as they start to probably ramp up SGA towards the playoffs. I'll look for them to get the win and the cover.
Over in 7 of their last 8 games as well. Tonight's total in Oklahoma City is at 227. Now, OKC was one of the best covered teams in the NBA all year long until March. And since March, they have played 19 games, and they have only covered 4 times. Now, they have dropped 5 of their last 9 because of the rest of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but still a little bit precarious for OKC. That, of course, not a Midwest matchup played in Oklahoma City. Our producers love to do that anytime in the games in Oklahoma City. They call it a Midwest matchup. Now we return tonight to Madison Square Garden, I believe, or maybe, nope, the New York Knicks on the road in the United Center in Chicago. That's a Midwest matchup. Now the Knickerbockers, a 5-point favorite on the road against the Bulls. Chicago locked in to the play-in tournament, more than likely in the 9-10 game against the Atlanta Hawks. The New York Knicks, JY, trying to hold on to home floor advantage, at least in the opening round of the postseason. Favorite on the road. What do you expect out of the Knicks?
Well, if you know, last week they went and they played them, and the Knicks played absolutely terrible, and they lost. They were down big. They tried to make a run, ended up losing it by 8-10. This is a big spot for a New York Knicks team that in their last 4 games could possibly find their way to the 2 seed, depending on what happens. So I think it's a big game for New York. I think they need to start to play better. OG Anunoby, that was his first game back when that loss. That team looks to get rolling. Typically, they're very good on the road against the spread. Yeah. I think the Knicks get the job done and cover the spread at the United Center.
Let me ask you a question, Coach. Final 3 games of the season, right? We're handicapping these games as is, and also it's one of those key parts of the year where some teams need it, some teams technically don't, and some of these are violent line swings. How do you take that into an equation, watching some of these teams finish out their season? Is it so simple to say, let me just take the team that needs to win this game? Because they all get paychecks, as we like to say.
No, I think it becomes tough. So you have to look at teams and how they're going to use their roster and how they're going to play their minutes. For instance, you look at Boston, a team that is still ultra competitive. Well, Joe Mazzulla is playing his second group guys a lot in the second half. So when you start looking at teams like that, maybe look at first half as when you bet them. Not bet the whole game or first quarter. Team gets off to a good start. They play their normal guy, their normal minutes in the first quarter. Stay away from taking full games. Look at halves, look at quarters, and bet the game live and get in and out of positions accordingly.
I can't believe your follow-up after the New York Knicks breakdown that we had against the Bulls tonight was not about the one and only Tay-Tay.
Yeah, by the way, what's your thoughts on Tay-Tay here? I mean, can he be the MVP of the playoffs?
Yeah. Who is Tay-Tay?
You know who Tay-Tay is?
I have no idea who Tay-Tay is.
You don't know who Tay-Tay is?
I know Jalen Brunson is.
Pulling up
Take a guess. Take a guess. Who's Tay-Tay?
Splash.
I have no idea.
We told you the game that he plays in, the Knicks and the Bulls. Who's Tay-Tay?
Jalen Brunson?
DiVincenzo.
Dante DiVincenzo.
Oh, Delaware Jordan? White Mamba?
Tay-Tay.
That boy nice, a.k.a. the Big Ragu. He's always eating.
Over 4.5 threes, plus 132 tonight. A best bet up next. Oh.
I mean, is it pretty much cut and dry that NC State is the biggest surprise of the weekend? I mean, I don't think anybody's bracket had the Wolfpack going this far.
I think they're going to find a way to keep this one close. And we all know Purdue's tournament history under Matt Painter. They've had a lot of early exits when they've been good teams, and maybe this is the time they'll exercise their demons. It's kind of like when Virginia lost to that 16-seed UMBC.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that I've been able to move to a home that I'm very excited about is it's really cool, and so far just love everybody that I've met at SportsGrid, and I'm just super pumped for the opportunity. Sometimes things that I wouldn't feel comfortable asking, whether it was me playing and just trying to get a tidbit on the golf course and certain thing a player might have learned. Now I'm getting that information because I don't mind asking it.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Before we say farewell and end out these 3 hours live in studio together on this Tuesday on the early line, we give you a best bet. I am Ben Stevens. He is Donnie Rightside. We'll be remote again tomorrow. We'll be staring into a camera to look at each other.
Yeah.
These 3 hours have been a ton of fun here on this Tuesday morning following National Championship Monday. College basketball is over. I can't remember the last time here on the SportsGrid Network I have given out a non-college hoops best bet, either in the men's or women's game. What are you going with today?
I'm going baseball today.
I'm going to go NBA. All right, so before we say farewell, before we say goodbye, it is time now for bye, bye, bye. Full Major League Baseball slate on this Tuesday. All 30 clubs in action, 15 total games, 2 in the daytime, 13 starting 6 p.m. Eastern time or later. What do you like?
Look, we're going to go to the Los Angeles Dodgers today. We're going to keep it simple. It's an easy breakdown. Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, and Freddie Freeman absolutely lacing right-handed pitchers this year. So I'm going to take a plus 125 price and take Freddie Freeman to get an RBI. You might say, Donnie, why didn't you take the other two? Well, Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani probably going to be on base. Freddie Freeman probably just needs a sac fly to cash in that ticket. That's where we're going. Freddie Freeman, anytime RBI today, plus 125 FanDuel Sportsbook.
All of a sudden, I'm talking myself into being an Atlanta Hawks guy. DRS has converted me because for most of this year, you know that I would bring up the Hawks and remind everybody they are the worst cover team in the NBA. Now, they're still not a very good cover team, but what they do is play a ton of overs. 10 of the last 13 games for the Hawks have hit the over. Tonight, they're at home in an interesting play-in tournament type of Eastern Conference postseason feel against Miami. The Heat, a 4-point road favorite. Miami has also gone over in 6 straight in 7 of its last 8. Trae Young, practice for the Hawks. That is big, progressing toward the postseason. Over 220 between Miami and Atlanta tonight in the ATL. Also, I lean under 236 between Golden State and L.A. If it is a play-in tournament preview with a postseason feel, that total is a little bit too high. Thank you for joining us in these 3 hours. Live in studio, he's Donnie Rightside. I'm Ben Stevens. We'll talk to you tomorrow, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, here on the Early Line.